We've learned how to make the structure of websites, but how do we make them interactive? For that, we'll use JavaScript. JavaScript is a language used by websites to create functionality not achievable with pure HTML. With JavaScript, we can make our website interactive and easier to use. First, we'll talk about how to use JavaScript on our website. We may want to put JavaScript in a separate file, but for now we can put it in a special HTML tag called script. Within this script tag, we can write JavaScript code which will be run when the website loads. First, we can write a simple print statement. We can open the file in the browser and see that Hello World is printed in the console. Now let's try to do something a little more visual. If we want to interact with the HTML document, we have to use the Document Object Model, or DOM. Recall that we can give HTML elements both IDs and classes. Before, we've used this to style elements using CSS, but we can also use them in JavaScript. Using the document keyword, we can get access to the elements. First, we can try modifying the style of an element. Here, we've created an HTML div with the ID test. In the JavaScript code, we've declared a variable named test using the let keyword. JavaScript has weak typing, meaning that we don't need to define types of variables when declaring them. What if we want this to happen interactively instead of when the page loads? To do this, we need to use callbacks. A callback is a function which is called at some point in the future, such as after a certain period of time or after an event. First, let's try to update the style 1 second after the page loads. We use the built-in function setTimeout and give it the function as a parameter. We also give it the value of 1000, which is the delay in milliseconds. This code will do the same thing as the previous example, but it will delay the style change by 1 second. JavaScript also lets us use callbacks as repeating tasks. To do this, we can use setInterval. In this example, we're using the innerText attribute to append test each time the function is run. We can see that when we load the file, the element adds a new test every second. Also, we've changed the callback function. Instead of defining a separate function, we're passing an anonymous function to setInterval. This makes the code shorter and easier to read. Every HTML element has some built-in events we can use for interactivity. Here, we'll use the onClick event. We've assigned to the onClick attribute of test a new callback function which changes the text color of the div to blue. We've also again changed the callback from an anonymous function to a lambda function. This is an even more concise way of writing functions, and is what we usually use for callbacks. Additionally, we've changed let to const to indicate that we have no plans on changing the value of that variable. This isn't required, but it makes the code easier to understand for other programmers. Now, let's try an example, a bouncing logo. First, we define that style of the logo, which is a yellow square with JS in the bottom right corner. We also make sure the document takes up the entire vertical room of the browser. Next, we define the logo element. Now, we start our JavaScript code. First, let's declare all of our variables. We get the logo element in the same way we have before, and then we define a few variables to help with the animation. First, we have x and y, which are the coordinates of the logo bouncing around on the screen. Next are dx and dy. These are the current directions of the logo in both the horizontal and vertical direction. We can start out with both variables being negative so as to not cause the logo to detect a collision right at the start. Finally is size, which is the width of the logo. We're assuming that this is the same as the height. We use logo.clientWidth instead of logo.style.width because this gives us an exact numerical representation of the width in pixels as opposed to some other unit. Finally, we add the code to actually animate the logo. We have put all of this in setInterval, so it will repeat, in this case every 10 milliseconds. First, we add the direction variables to x and y. If they are positive, it will move down and to the right, respectively. If they are negative, it will move up and to the left. Next, we will check if there has been a horizontal collision. We can do this by checking if the x-coordinate is less than 0, which would indicate it has hit the left wall, or if the x-coordinate is greater than the total width minus the size of the logo, which would indicate it's hit the right wall. We need to subtract the size of the logo because the coordinates correspond to the top left corner of the logo. We can do the same with the y-coordinate. If a collision has been detected, we flip the direction and undo the movement for that frame so it doesn't go out of bounds. Finally, we set the location of the logo, using margins, in pixels. This may seem a bit overwhelming, but it's really just what we were doing before with some added functionality. After completing this example, take a moment to make sure you understand what we just went over.